Hello and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. Now today I'm going to be doing a review on a wristwatch. Unlike the previous watches we've talked about on this channel, it's not going to be luxury. It's in fact the opposite end of the scale, and it's a Casio. And it's a Casio which, should you choose to invest in it, is more or less accessible to everybody because of its price point. So I hope you're going to enjoy this interesting review on this Casio piece. I've been wearing this model for over a year now. I've given it a thorough test, so I think I'm in a really good position to talk to you about its pros and cons. So let's turn this camera around and have a look at this piece close up. So here it is. This is the star of the show, the Casio W-800H, purchased by me off Amazon for a mere £16.71 just a little while ago. Well, I say just a little while ago. I've actually been wearing this watch for over 12 months, so over a year. So I've given it a really good, thorough test. And I own a number of watches, so it's fair to say I've taken a good comparison between this and other watches. Now, I really like to think about the brands because heritage means a lot to me when I'm buying wristwatches, and I like to know more about the brand and where the watch originated from. Now, Casio probably isn't, the name which springs to mind when you think of quality, good value timepieces, because Casio actually is one of the world's top 5 watch brands. They make over 1 million. They sell more than 1 million wristwatches in the UK alone in any given 12-month period. So really high volume, perhaps not necessarily expensive watches, but they certainly cater to the watch wearing community of the world, and they do so in great volume. Casio as a brand, like many of these old heritage brands, got a bit of a history behind it. So it came into being in 1946, and it has, still to this day, has its HQ in Tokyo. So it's a good Japanese brand, and of course we know the Japanese, when it comes to engineering, are really at the top of the game in the world tree when it comes to it. So they made the world's first electronic calculator, interestingly, in 1957, and today they make telephones, mobile phones, cameras, musical instruments, calculators still, and of course wristwatches. So they make quite a lot of electronic pieces which are highly desirable but not necessarily very expensive. So they really hit that range. So their range of digital watches is quite broad. There is of course the G-Shock, which is probably the most famous watch which they currently produce, and they are, some of the older models now increasingly becoming quite collectible, but still they produce them in large numbers at very modest prices, which allows people to access these pieces possibly as the first watch that they own, because these are cheap enough to own in numbers as well as quite financially accessibly. Perhaps most of their watches, the digital ones, which if you look on their website, which are very modest websites, but a lot of their watches have a kind of retro look to them. They're quite somewhat oldie worldy digital in appearance, but they do have a cult following with consumers who really just seek that durable but highly capable, yet modestly priced electronic items, their watches. Their F91 watch, of course, being one of the most prolific wristwatches worn anywhere in the world at any given time, and they are so cheap, they're so modestly priced, it's hard to not to understand why people wouldn't choose them as a watch to wear, for any reason, let alone the simple fact that they are very practical and capable. So the founder, Tadao Casio, along with his 3 brothers, with a background in fabrication, founded the company, which today stems from the first patent. The first thing that they ever produced was remarkably a cigarette smoking product. So it was a kind of ring which fitted on the finger, which you could slot your cigarette into, which allowed that cigarette to be smoked right down to the nub. Because of course in post-war Japan it was a total deprivation, there was poverty, and people wanted to smoke every last particle of their cigarettes, and that's where they started the company, with this bizarre smoking accoutrement which allowed people to smoke more than they could normally. And from that, they rolled that money over the profit they made from that product into the manufacture of the calculator, and then they sort of diversified as they became more established as an engineering company, and with a knowledge of electronics they went on to produce this range of watches which have, you know, this particular model, this Casio W-800H within the range today, and still very much purchased by many people and very accessible. So what features do we have with this piece? Well, this is a remarkably capable watch when you consider that it costs sub £17 on Amazon on any given day. And I dare say, you know, you catch it when it's on an offer somewhere or something like that, and you could probably get it much less expensively than £16.71. So within this watch, what can I see? Well, you look at the case, and for a start, as you can see, it is a resin case, and it's got quite a long strap on it. I'll just undo the strap, and the strap is quite a lengthy one, which would easily accommodate somebody with a particularly long wrist. My wrist is only 6.5 inches, and it does allow quite a lot of overlap. I'll put it on wrist for you at the end so you can see what it looks like, but it would easily accommodate somebody with an 8.5, maybe even a 9-inch wrist. So if you're a big old unit, don't be afraid of trying this watch out. It will certainly fit you at the very least. And that resin case means that it is robust, durable. It's got certain element of water resistance, obviously, and it'll take a bashing. If you look at the back of the watch, the case back, we can see on the back it is a stainless steel case covering with just some details about the watch on the back there. And as you can see, held in place by 4 little screws, which means it would be very straightforward to change that battery. Now, one of the features of this watch is in fact a 10-year battery life, which means that that quartz unit inside is going to keep beating away for 10 years in optimum sort of situations if you're not constantly pressing the illuminator button. And when I talk about illuminator, you see as it's declared on the top of the case there, it is illuminator, which means that it has a push button light up display, which lights the watch up at dark and makes it easy to read under any lighting conditions, which is, you know, pretty good. Now that resin case and strap it's got an 18mm lug width there, which you know, is not really going to be much of a concern to you, because I'd be very surprised if anybody would, you know, choose to change that strap. But the diameter, face diameter of the unit here is round about 37mm, not including the pushers. So very modest size, you know, it's not massive, but it has got quite a bit of depth to it. It is 14mm thick, which gives it, you know, a certain... It doesn't feel like a flimsy thing on the wrist, even though it's very light. It's certainly not weighing in any great shakes, but it is, you know, it doesn't feel an immodest unit because it is quite thick, and that resin case, you know, gives it an element of presence on the wrist. So it's not some sort of flimsy throwaway, light as a wafer thin. So what other features do we have? Well, it has an acrylic glass, which is, you know, perhaps one of the downsides. So it would scratch very easily. But of course that would be also easy to polish out with a bit of poly watch or, you know, toothpaste if the push comes to shove. Very similar a result can be achieved using toothpaste. So that acrylic glass is one of the things. It has a water resistant, as it declares, on the back of 100 meters. And you know what? I have worn this watch in the water, and it is genuinely water resistant. So I would have no hesitation in saying this is the piece that you could comfortably take swimming, wear in the water, and it wouldn't let you down. And let's be honest, if it did, you've only lost £16.71. So it's not a great gamble when you're wearing this piece. So that 100-meter water resistance and that 10-year battery makes this a very attractive proposition, really, when you also weigh up that it's got an automatic perpetual calendar. So when you set the calendar using one of the buttons here, let's have a look, what functions have we got? The mode button. So the calendar tells you, you know, the day, but when you set it for the day you're on now, it keeps track of leap years and everything like that, so you never need to adjust it again, which is a fantastic little feature, I think, when it comes to this watch. Perpetual calendar, what more can you ask? And it's displayed on the front of the watch there, the day, the date and the year, so you know exactly where you are in time, as well as the time itself. Now the time feature is displayable in either 24-hour or 12-hour sort of preference, wherever you have. As you can see, I have it on the 12-hour preference with a little P indicating it's PM there just to the left, or of course on the 24-hour that disappears because you doesn't need it. It's a day date function, so as well as that wonderful date at the bottom with that perpetual calendar, we also see in the top left hand side, just behind my finger there, that the date is also indicated, which makes it very easy if you're using this watch in work, if you're filling in forms or something like that. and as most people do, you look to remind you of the day, the date. It's all there on the opening screen for you. No messing around, no buttons need to be pushed. It's right in front of you. Let's have a look. What else have we got in the mode section then? Well, it is an alarm as well. So we have an alarm in there, and it's a repeating alarm. You can have the alarm to chime every hour if you want. You just remind you on the hour, and it's just very practical. It can be set some time in advance to a certain date as well. So it's a remarkably programmable alarm function considering the type of watch that this is. It just never ceases to amaze me, the complexity that you can get for such a small amount of money. We have a stopwatch as well, so lap functions, things like that, and again, very practical, very simple to operate. Let's get going. Oh, make sure I press the right button. There we go. So the stopwatch is off and running, and it's got various split timing features and things like that, which I have to say are not something which I use with any regularity, or perhaps you wouldn't if you use a smartwatch. But if you want to go simple, old school, this watch has indeed got you covered. So what else have we got here? Let's keep clicking on that mode button. There's always things that I don't use. There's a dual time as well, so it performs the functions of a GMT watch if you want to, and you can set that time for an alternative time zone. So if you're on holiday, you can set the time for your country of origin, and it also, of course, wonderful little feature here, reminds you of the local time there in the bottom left of the display. So as I say, great functionality really when you consider what type of watch this is. So if you're on holiday, if you're living in another country and you want to ring your relatives who live abroad and you just want a reminder of the time there, in case you're in Australia and you're ringing somebody in the middle of the night when it's the daytime with you, it's just a very, very practical application. So yeah, some really great functions for a very modest price, and that's the sort of standard screen that you see there. So I wouldn't say it's beautiful in any horological sense. It's undoubtedly remarkably capable in almost every way, I think, and the length of time I've owned this, I wear it when I'm doing jobs which I don't want to endanger perhaps a more expensive piece, or I know it's going to get wet, or there's a risk factor to what I'm doing. I'm quite comfortably happy to wear this watch because I know it's it's not going to be a gut wrencher if it's damaged or broken in any way. But I think even though it's not beautiful, it has a certain attraction to it. It is, as I say, not a tiny little wisp of a thing with no weight at all to it, which is one of the things I'm not particularly drawn to its sister watch, the F91 Casio, which is that much smaller, that much more flimsy. I think this watch has a bit more to it. It's got practically not much more weight to it, but its size, its slightly larger size, gives it more of a presence, which makes it a more attractive function for me. And as far as the value proposition is concerned, I don't think you can get greater bang for your buck with any watch. And I'm going to give you a comparison. I've done it before in another watch review, but I'm going to give you a lovely comparison. So here's this watch, and it does all of those functions that I've just mentioned. The LED lights, the perpetual calendar, which is automatic, the alarm, the changeable display from 24 to 12 hours, water resistance to 100 meters, dual time stopwatch, programmable alarm. I'll just pop that down. And on my left wrist, I'm actually wearing a Rolex Submariner wristwatch. So I'll just pop that off so I can pull them together so we can see them side by side. So here we are. The Rolex Submariner, possibly one of the most iconic wristwatches you can buy in the world, and sought after if you can get hold of one. I think there's still a bit of a wait list for these. I've owned this one for just over a year. Obviously I'm delighted with it. It's a beautiful and fantastic wristwatch. But you know what this wristwatch does, this Rolex? It tells the time, and that is all. That is the only feature of this watch. You might say it's water resistant as well, and you can do other things with it. You can time dives, but its core function, its horological function, is purely it tells the time. That's the only complication this watch has. It tells the time in minutes, hours and seconds, and that is it. This watch, the Casio, actually tells the time with more accuracy because it is quartz at the end of the day, and it will lose or gain no time over the passage of its life, no doubt. The Rolex, even though it's certified as a chronometer, it still has a loss and gain of time because it is a mechanical watch, and you can't get that same infinite attention and accuracy that you would get with a digital watch. But the Rolex here, I'm holding in my left hand to the left of the screen, that costs today £6,300. And this watch in my right hand, the Casio, costs £16.71. So that means, if my mathematics is correct, you could buy 377 Casios for a single Rolex Submariner. And what you have to ask yourself the question, is the Submariner 377 times better than the Casio? And I would say it's not. So the Casio, when you look at that price proposition, is actually a superb price proposition. My assessment, having owned the watch for a year, a little over a year now, worn it consistently, it's worth buying. You know, if you need a watch or you need to tell the time and you are concerned that, you know, you don't want to invest a lot of money in a watch, or you want a watch which is extremely, eminently practical, capable, will never let you down, and even if it did, you can replace it for a little more than a round of drinks in the pub, you know that you can invest with safety. So that would be my sort of view on it. And I'll just pop the watch onto my wrist. I'll just lift my arm out of screen to allow me to do that. So here we are. Now there's the watch on my wrist, and as I said, it's got quite a long tail on it. In fact, if I tuck that in a little bit, it's somewhat less obvious. It's not a bother. I mean, you know, it's quite a practical little piece. I mean, I've got a 6.5-inch wrist, and you know, it fits my wrist, and I'm sure it would fit somebody's wrist that's a little larger, a little smaller than that. So I don't think you would need to worry too much. And you know, you can make an investment in confidence that you are not wasting your money. Well, that was the Casio W-800H, a good workhorse of the Casio range, and as you can probably tell, a watch which I can only recommend for the amount of money which it costs. It's a no-brainer really. If you need to tell the time and you don't want to spend a lot of money, or you need to tell the time and you can't spend a lot of money, this is probably a safe option for you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this review today. If you have, please click that thumbs up button for me to let me know you're enjoying our work. And while you're there, you just as well click that subscribe button as well, so you don't miss any of the future content we provide for you. And please do leave me a comment in the comment section below, where you'll also find a link to this watch should you want to go out and buy one on the Amazon website, just like I did. So thanks for listening today. I look forward to seeing you again here at the Chaps Guide very soon. Until then, take care, chaps.